Every year in Pride's Hollow, we have a parade. Any of you who have lived in a small town, well, you know the magnitude of such an occasion. The parade is a tradition that some would say has, well, outlasted its reason for existence. But not in Pride's Hollow. We know exactly how this parade got started. It all started with Old Man Withers. Folks weren't really surprised when Old Man Withers died. I mean, he was, after all, 97. The only surprising thing was that with all that money, he wasn't able to buy himself more time. We all knew about it right away because, well, in a small town like Pride's Hollow, news travels fast. So fast that often the one starting the rumor has already heard it. But even faster than the news of his passing was the rumor that he had left something in his will to every family in town. So while women baked their infamous funeral casserole dishes and men dusted off their Sunday suits, people whipped themselves up into a frenzy, wondering how much they would get and what they'd buy first, secretly wishing they'd spent a little bit more time with the man. So anyway, funeral attendance was high, of course, as everyone stayed until the very end, eyeing that stranger who had come into town to handle Old Man Withers' estate. Finally, the stranger got up, this gray-haired gentleman in an ill-fitting suit and pretentious glasses. And he cleared his throat and he announced that yes, the rumor was true. Theodore P. Withers had left a portion of his assets to every family in town, under one condition, that they honor his last dying wish. Now, we all expected he would want a wing of the hospital named after him, or get a statue of him in the town square, or maybe have his portrait hung up in the parlor over at the First Baptist Church. But what they heard was something they didn't expect. In fact, it made no sense at all. But it was very clear that if they wanted to inherit their share, they had no choice. For you see, this man of such a vast fortune had attached to his inheritance one stipulation, that on the day following the reading of this document, every person in town was required to act like a child again. That's right, to be childlike, childish, to do something you always wanted to do as a child but couldn't, or something you outgrew, to paint your face or blow bubbles, do magic, wear a prom dress to work. There would be no wrong way to play. There would be no rules. But wait, there's more, the stranger announced as he pulled out this box that was filled with what looked like aprons. He said, in the course of your activities tomorrow, each of you is to wear one of these superhero capes. That's right, a cape tied around your neck. And on it, you are to write your superpowers, the things that make you great, the things that you're good at, your talents, your gifts, your skills, the things you love about yourself, and the things that other people love about you. And because sometimes it's hard for us to see our own superpowers, then other people will be able to write the powers down on your cape so that by the end of the day, your cape should be full. Meet up wearing your capes at sundown tomorrow at the town square, and you shall receive your fortune. People were shocked. I mean, never would they have dreamt of such a request. And act like a child? I mean, this just didn't make any sense, especially coming from a man like Old Man Withers, whose favorite expression was sour. I mean, he was never even once seen smiling in public. And they weren't sure how much they were going to get, what the reward would be for such a challenge, but well, any reward was enough in a small town where money was, well, sometimes hard to come by. The sun rose on that next day, just like it had for generations before it in Pride's Hollow, only on this day something was different. There had been a shift, if you will, in the energy, a change almost too subtle to even detect as folks rolled out of bed and into their new normal. For often the things that move us most start with just the merest whisper of change. So if you had been traveling through Pride's Hollow that day, if it had been a town on the way to anywhere, you too might have detected that something was amiss. We were all sitting around early that morning in Merlin Verlin and Shirley's House of Beauty, where gossip is truth, big hair is a blessing, and tabloids are the second gospel. We're sitting around in various degrees of self beautification, some requiring a little bit more work than others, like Ernestine, bless her heart. She comes in asking for the Jennifer Aniston look. I could feel Merlin, Verlin, and Shirley doing that inward eye roll to the heavens as if asking for divine assistance. But we were sitting there, and Bitsy was telling us that she knew exactly what her challenge was going to be. Bitsy said that when she was a child, she had always wanted to twirl the baton, to be a majorette in the middle school marching band. And her mother had always said that she couldn't, because she said that role was for little girls who were thin and pretty. So Bitsy had decided, thanks to a little courage from this motivational speaker who'd come traveling through town giving this talk on conquering your fears, that Bitsy would on this very day conquer her fear of wearing a two-piece in public. And, well, the way we saw it, she had every reason to be afraid. But she decided she's going to conquer her fear and do it but good, and that the only way to do that was going to be on this day to walk directly through, no, to march directly through the middle of town, wearing nothing but a bright yellow string bikini and white pumps, twirling the baton. No shorts, no long skirt, no moo with tropical flowers on it. We're talking full exposure. And not really early or late at night. No, she was going to do it during lunch hour. Busiest time of day in Pride's Hollow, and down Main Street, busiest street. And I tell you what, Bitsy did it. And she didn't walk hunched over either. I'm going to tell you that woman marched. She marched with her head held high. She marched right past that big bay window of Ray Jean's diner where all those forks sat frozen in midair. She marched right past the local high school where her son Donald, third row trumpet, was having band practice, and we don't need to talk about how his day was turning out. You see, suddenly, the more Aunt Bitsy marched, the more, the more the moment became bigger. At least in her mind, anyway. For Bitsy began to think that she was paving the way for all women to come after her. And I'm sure her vision was grand, but I'm not so sure she accomplished her goal, because in all the chaos and the activity of the day, Bitsy never realized the full implications in purchasing something known to most folks as one of those thong bikinis. She thought thong just meant it was made somewhere in China or something. Talk about making a statement. And then she gets all caught up in the adrenaline and the applause and decides that she's going to add some dance steps to her routine. And well, we don't need to talk about how that turned out, because the only dancing Aunt Bitsy knew about was clogging. And for future reference, clogging isn't a very good dance to pick if you're wearing a bright yellow string bikini and white pumps. There were parts of that woman exposed that up until now, good Lord himself was the only one who knew about. And every one of those parts was shimmering and shaking wildly back and forth to the beating rhythm of those marching pumps, like some kind of country choir where everybody's struggling to be the solo. I tell you what, word spread in that town quicker than chicken pox through daycare. People were fired up. I mean, it was one thing to be childlike. They felt this was another thing entirely. There were people thinking Bitsy was making fun of the weight challenged. There was other people saying, no, it's a weight challenge people Aunt Bitsy's sticking up for. Finally, the mayor said, please, Bitsy, take your business back home. I mean, what would happen if we all wanted to walk through town wearing string bikinis and white pumps? To which somebody replied, well, town might just be a little better off for it. And then there were those who, underneath all the I can't believes and how could she's and who would ever's, was this tiny voice has said, yeah, Bitsy, you go, girl. Wishing we could all borrow just 1 ounce of Aunt Bitsy's courage. I mean, can courage even be borrowed? Well, I think it can. And I think it happened that day. For those who were lucky enough to watch Aunt Bitsy march past their window, those who were lucky enough to appreciate the moment for what it was, stopped what they were doing and went to join in. Ray Jean put down her coffee pot, told her husband to watch the diner, and stepped in to join Betsy. Merline, Verline, and Shirlene followed suit. Mildred took a deep breath and walked away from that nasty husband. Bethany, shy, quiet Bethany, she joined in the march and found herself marching to the beat of a new belief in her own dream. And one by one, women joined in, linked arms. It was a beautiful thing to see. When they got through, they all wrote down the superpower on their capes, one that would forever sing out above all the others. They wrote courage. And then they wrote a second one to remind them that courage could be borrowed. And underneath it, they wrote the word encourage. They didn't realize how much Ray Jean would need that borrowed courage in the year ahead, or how often she would wrap herself up in that cape and borrow some more. Ed Jenkins, father of 5, wife to Sarah, was disgusted and appalled at this silly request. He did not have time for this. He was a businessman. He was a salesman, top producer. He didn't work, he didn't get paid. We don't get paid, we don't eat, he said. Act like a child. He didn't even get to act like a child when he was a child. Oh no, that door had been shut for him a long time ago. Childhood? Psh, was overrated. Our family will not participate in such foolishness, he announced at the breakfast table, until his wife grabbed his arm and whispered, I've never asked you for anything until today. Well, what are we supposed to do? He growled as his children stared down into their cereal bowls. Finally, the youngest child spoke up and said, I want to jump in the leaves. You never let us jump in the leaves. And so, for the first time in ever, Ed Jenkins called in sick and played hooky. Went to the hardware store to pick up some more rakes. They raked all the leaves out of the front yard and the backyard. They raked the leaves out of the neighbor's yard. They kept going until they had a pile of leaves so high you could see it from both ends of the street. It was Ed's idea that they tie that rope on that limb that was hanging out right over that pile of leaves. So if you could climb up it and then climb out on the branch to the rope, you could swing out and jump in the top of the pile of leaves. It was Ed Jenkins you could hear laughing the loudest of all. Well, until he sprained his ankle. But that's okay. He turned out to be fine. It took a while to heal, but what's even more important was that something else healed in him that day. Something deeper down. When I guess you could say that the child he never got to be was born again. They took a picture of all of them wearing their capes and bouncing in the leaves. It became the family portrait that hung over the fireplace for years to come. Ed would not live to see all of his children get married. And at his funeral, they told story after story of the wonderful memories they had with their dad. Memories that all started with a pile of leaves and a cape. Meanwhile, a couple of blocks over, Crazy Katie was walking very deliberately through town with exaggerated steps caused by these enormous flippers she was wearing on her feet that matched the inner tube around her waist and the snorkel coming out of her mouth. Her wide smile cradled these enormous scuba diving goggles she had strapped to her face. Her polka dotted bathing cap clashed horribly with her red and white striped bathing skirt. She carried a watermelon under each arm. Now, Crazy Katie was what folks referred to in a whisper as addled, gentle and carefree, wandering through life with little clarity or purpose. It was never a surprise to see her show up at your Thanksgiving dinner table or pop up uninvited beside you while you're getting your teeth cleaned. You would just share a knowing look over her head with the others that said, "Well, that's Crazy Katie for you." So it was no surprise when Crazy Katie announced that she was going to, on this day for her challenge, hold her own birthday swimming party, despite the fact that she did not have a pool, nor did she know how to swim, and it wasn't her birthday. The town fountain, of course, seemed the logical solution. And who could turn down watermelon floats with toothpick umbrellas? Now, on any other given day, this would have been ignored or considered something to be dealt with. But, well, not today. Today was different, thanks to this challenge from Old Man Withers. So, while Isaac the postman, who happened to be walking by the town fountain delivering the mail just in time to see Crazy Katie go splashing through it, while Isaac knew that it would delay his route and make him late for dinner, well, this time he stopped. He put his bag down, removed his shoes, hung his black socks over the side of the fountain, rolled his pants leg up, and climbed on in. He watched Katie's entire synchronized swimming routine. Twice she messed up the first time. Watched her open presents that didn't exist and ate imaginary cake. At the end of the day, Katie announced that it was the best birthday ever, even if her cape did get a little wet. But Isaac helped her hang it up to dry and made sure that he wrote her new superpowers on the cape: joy and wide-eyed wonder. And as Isaac walked away, he realized that perhaps he could use a little more of that in his life too. And so he added those superpowers on his own cape and vowed to make them so. Which is exactly what he did. And why, to this day, if you head up the north side of town, go a little bit past Buster's Bait and Tackle, you will see a little yellow house, and you'll see a tiny little sign out front, a wooden sign that says the Hope House. This is a place where people with mental disabilities can go and find people who care, people who will have imaginary birthday parties and sip imaginary tea. And if you go up the steps of the Hope House and you look in the bricks, carved in little letters, you have to look close, you'll see these words: Happy birthday, Katie. Love, Isaac. Who never forgot to look at the world with joy and wide-eyed wonder. Meanwhile, Barnsley P. Wentworth III, an accountant by trade, knew exactly what he was going to do for his challenge as he took the day off work, painted his face, put on a big red nose and oversized suspenders, and became Juggles the clown. And he set out with one intent: to be silly and to make people happy. He went everywhere, all over town, doing the same routine he used to do when he was 7. He went to the nursing home, he went to the school, he went to the hospital, to the post office, and when he finally ran out of places to go, he headed to the next town and the next town. He was headed back, tired, exhausted, when he took a wrong turn that probably wasn't, and he found himself having to turn around in the parking lot of a trailer park. And that's where he saw these balloons on the mailbox, which, as you know, are the calling card of a child's birthday party. And something made him stop. He turned the car off, put his nose back on, grabbed his bag, and jumped out. Clown, clown! You could hear the kids squealing from inside the trailer as these little freckled faces started to appear from behind the curtain made out of a sheet. Clown, clown! The door flung open and these kids start running out down this ramp that has been built up against the side. And they're followed quickly by what obviously was the birthday boy rolling in his chair behind them. He was the one in the birthday hat with the tassel. Clown, clown! And the mother stood there in the doorway, her eyes wide, her jaw dropped, as she stared at this clown that she had told her son they could not afford. And she whispered, "Thank you," and started to believe again. Clown, clown! The kids just kept squealing in excitement as Juggles made balloon animals and hats and swords, and there's no doubt about it, it was just the very best day. And right before he left, the birthday boy squeezed him around the knees and whispered, "Thank you, Juggles. I knew you'd come." And he started to believe again. As Barnsley was driving home that night, staring at his briefcase, he made a decision that would forever change his life and baffle his boss. For it was on that day that Barnsley P. Wentworth III traded in his ledger for a squeaky nose and a smile. When he told his father what he had done, his father called him a fool and said that he would never amount to anything. Juggles died in his late 70s, still wearing a cape and a smile. He never made more than $50 a job and considered himself the richest man in the world. And so it went in Pride's Hollow, as people became children again. It was a beautiful thing to see, and the effects would be felt for a lifetime, if not more, in ways big and some too small to even be measured. As sundown arrived on that day, people made their way towards the fountain, wearing their capes, buzzing excitedly as they shared with neighbors and friends what had happened in their day. And as you were making your way towards the fountain, you could see this hot air balloon that they had in fact been watching float over the town most of the day. They could see this balloon making its descent. And at the right time, when the crowd had gathered, the balloon came to a rest on the ground, and out of the basket climbed that stranger in the ill-fitting suit and pretentious glasses. And he stepped up to the microphone and he began to speak. And this is what he said. He said, "I'd like to officially introduce myself. My name is Teddy, or formally Theodore P. Withers II. Old Man Withers, as you call him, was my father. We hadn't spoken in over 40 years. He's never met my children. He was my father, but never really my dad. He was just too busy. Too busy working, too busy achieving, too busy learning, too busy building and growing, just too busy for me. So he was a stranger to me until several months ago when he called me up to talk. He was realizing that his days were numbered and there were things that he wanted to tell me, things that should have been said a long time ago. The man cleared his throat, paused, and continued. You see, my father probably seemed to you a bitter man, an angry man, a ruthless man. And he was all of those. And yes, it's true, he never smiled in public, and not much in private either. It wasn't so much that he was angry or mean. He was just trying to be what he thought his own father wanted him to be. He spent his entire life trying to be good enough for his dad and never quite getting there. Always trying to reach those superpowers beyond his grasp. Too busy looking forward that he never stopped to look around and see what was already there. And so when he called me to make amends before it was too late, he shared with me his biggest regret, that he had stopped having fun along the way, if in fact he'd ever started. That while he had lived a long life, a rich life, a full life, it was a life he had never really lived. That in all those years of being a father, he never took the moment to be a dad. That he never took the time to enjoy what was around him and to have fun along the way. It was his one regret and his dying wish that it not become ours. It's too late for my father, but it's not too late for you. That was the reason for his last dying wish, that we would take this day to stop and look around, to appreciate the gifts and the talents we already have, to see what's important, to become like children again. You see, when I was a child, I always wanted my father to take me on a hot air balloon ride, and we never got the time until today, when I guess you could say my father took this one last opportunity to be my dad. Yes, it is true you will all receive your share of my father's assets, but it is our hope that you've earned more than that your greatest reward has already been received. And so it was in Pride's Hollow that many people understood the gift that weighed more than money. In fact, they were so moved that they decided to honor this date every year in Old Man Wither's memory, that on this day it will forever be proclaimed as a holiday, that on this day every person in town would be forced to become a child again. And that's when they started the parade. For the parade would become a symbol to look at life with wide-eyed wonder and joy, which is exactly what they did. And every year the parade ends at that fountain in Town Square, where they had placed a statue. The statue they had made of Old Man Withers standing in a hot air balloon for the first time wearing a smile in public. And engraved on the side of the balloon in big letters to always be remembered, it says, "As we soar into the future, may we never forget to bring along the child we left." That day, Old Man Withers taught us all the importance of trusting our cape. My son was 6 years old. He was missing both front teeth. His hair was crooked where he had cut it. He's in the same cowboy boots he'd had on for weeks. He comes tearing down the hall faster than the wind, and he's wearing his favorite cape, made from a sheet and a safety pin. He climbs on top of the kitchen chair. He throws his arms out wide, and he says, "Mama, today I'm Superman, and now I'm going to fly." And I shook my head and told him for the 100th time that day that we don't climb on furniture. You know that it's not safe. And he looked me in the eyes with this wisdom words can't weigh. And he said, "Mama, sometimes there are days when you've just got to trust your cape." And he tore off down the hall faster than the wind. And his little words dove into my heart over and over again. For once again that boy taught me what books and degrees never could. And that's that life, it can't always be lived in your ought tos, musts, and shoulds. You can work, and you can prepare, and well, you'll learn from every mistake you've made. But at some point, you just got to jump and simply trust your cape. Knowing that you might fall, not knowing where you'll land, not knowing is anybody going to be waiting to catch me with outstretched hand. But if you miss your mark, I promise you won't care. For I believe you will have already found it while you were flying in midair. Now my son's outgrown those cartoons and his boots many times replaced. But I pray no matter what, that he'll still hold on to that cape. So what about you? Will you join the parade? Will you have the courage to choose to face the world in wide-eyed wonder? To take your place, no matter where it may be, up front twirling a baton, or a quiet seat in the back, or are you just going to choose to sit it out? The choice is yours. But I can tell you this: it will only come by once.